Welcome back to the YS channel, your home for movies reviews from the good, the bad, and the ugly. Derek, how was your trip to Greece?
My trip to Greece was fucking awesome, dude. Oh,
Awesome.
all right. Sorry. I was looking ahead. Edit that flub out. So yeah, anyway,
Trip to-
Greece was so let me pause for a couple seconds so it's easy for you to find it. So yeah, Greece was fucking awesome, right? Um, I was in one of those southern islands. That's obviously not part of the mainland. Bounced around a couple of those islands. Food out there was to die for, man. And of course, I was in Athens. Saw the Acropolis, the Pantheon, the Hall of the Gods, all that fun stuff. Unfortunately, I never did make my way over to Thermopylae, which is um home to the famous Battle of the Spartan 300, which happens to coincidentally be the movie we are reviewing.
what an amazing coincidence, Derek. 300 is the movie that put Zack Snyder on the map and gave us many memes back in the age of MySpace.
Yeah. This is Sparta. No, this is Patrick. Oh God. I remember all that shit from back in the day. The most fucking Scottish yelliest king of all time, Gerard Butler, King Leonidas. But anyhow, had a flashback of all those memes. So anyhow, the movie 300 gets a lot of shit about being historically inaccurate, which I don't think they made this movie with the intent of it being historically accurate. It's meant to be a action movie, right? It's a comic book movie, in fact. So take that with a grain of salt. And of course, the story itself, right, is being told as a propaganda piece by the narrator Dilios to rally the Greek troops for the upcoming Battle of Marathon that is launched at the end of the movie. It is brilliant how Dilios can vividly orate the story of King Leonidas.
Well, it is true. 300 Spartans died in one of history's greatest last stands, but they were actually joined by other soldiers from other Greek city-states and said historical event. And also, they did not go to battle wearing only a cape and speedos. They were fully armed for the time period. However, what is true in real life and in the movie, the various city-states of Greece were being threatened with assimilation into the Persian Empire, and they didn't want that. King Leonidas leads a small force that will lead a bigger gathering of Greek troops at the narrow path of the Thermopylae in hopes of holding back the invading Persians long enough to assemble a grand army.
Yeah, so as I already said earlier, King Leonidas is portrayed by Gerard Butler, and as the type of king you would actually want you leading into a fucking battle. Um, Especially one of the greatest battles in the last stands in history. He's not afraid to join in the bloodshed with his fellow troops, and he's not afraid to die at their side. And in fact, he relishes the opportunity to die in combat, which is actually part of the whole, like the real Spartan ethos. So, anyhow, um, even though this is based off a comic book retelling of the event, the actual story itself is inspiring, and then it's really just about never giving up, despite the odds being stacked against you, or in their case, the numbers. Because the Persian army, depending on the historical records you look at, like that battle at Thermopylae, their army was several thousand strong. So make of that what you will.
Well, Persians led by the giant effeminate god king Xerxes, who's they're all portrayed as demonic according to Dilios in this
Hmm.
and Xerxes for a reason is chosen to be depicted wearing body jewelry and piercings. Rodrigo Santoro, who's the actor who plays Xerxes in this movie, had to endure many hours of makeup and costuming each day he was on set and to be transformed into Xerxes. And he could not actually move that much, despite what you see in the movie. And that's why he's not really. That's why Xerxes is not really in the movie as much as he should be. Should be.
Hmm.
Should be. Um, his bodyguards in the movie, the Immortals, who are like Persians elite flying force, are portrayed with having a very unrealistic combat technique for the time period and region, in which they're depicted as being ninjas, which is something that well, it's cool in the movie, but from a historical point of view, it's kind of dumb, dumb because the Persian Empire had no contact with Japan or China during that time period, as far as I know of, and they just went with a cool looking martial art that looked awesome on film, but that's just my pick about the Persians in this movie.
Alrighty. So I'll just go out on a limb here. And this is a fun movie to watch. All right, you gotta turn your brain off for this one. Like if you're trying to watch this like some historically accurate, you know, drama or something, this is not the movie to watch. All right. I mean, they get some parts correct. Like the core of the story is accurate. And as I mentioned earlier in the review, you have to understand this is a comic book movie. So there was a comic book called 300 made by Frank Miller sometime in the 1980s. All right. Frank Miller, if anyone's absolutely unfamiliar with who the hell that is, he made the comic book series Sin City, The Dark Knight Returns, which is a retelling of Batman who's coming out of retirement in his 50s to beat the shit out of people. He did a run of X-Men called Days of Future Past and some other notable works out there. So, in fact, Frank Miller is somewhat semi-responsible for the Batman reboot in the late 80s, early 90s, where they kind of retooled his origins a bit. That's how you get Batman Year One. So he writes this comic book story, and it's just supposed to be this fanciful, graphic novel that is supposed to be a retelling of the Battle of Thermopylae, but of course, with a lot of liberties taken. So you did touch upon this earlier. The actual battle had a lot more participants than just 300 Spartans. Yeah, as you said, they were joined by other Greek city-states and allies. Like their actual combat force itself probably had a few thousand as well, but they were still dwarfed by the Persian army. That much is true. And it is also true that they were able to get the Persian army to kind of enter or meet up with them for the battle at the pass of Thermopylae. And as King Leonidas points out, very accurately, with that pass, it's narrow. And since it's narrow, you're not going to be swarmed by all several thousand of the Persian army at once. They can only like set in like a minimal amount of forces at any given time, which puts which actually um, reshapes the odds and it actually benefits the Greek defending forces. So they're no longer being attacked from all sides. Everything's in front of them, and they were the superior fighting force. But of course, you can only keep that up for so long. Eventually, Xerxes' army was able to just throw so many bodies that it finally, the Greek forces had to give up, and most of them died in battles. A handful did tactical retreats to pass on word, which again would ultimately lead to like the defeat of the Persian army at the Battle of Marathon. And then, of course, Xerxes' betrayal. God damn. All right, Frank Miller was obviously on some fucking acid. Okay. I don't know what the fuck he was on when he was writing these stories. Because if you look at the art from some of these books, again, going all the way back to the start of his career, up until like the Sin City era, like his comic book art looked normal. Like it looked like what you would expect to see from comic book art. And then like with the Sin City and some other stories, this shit looked like really abstract and weird as fuck looking, right? And then the Spartan or the 300 comic book has some of that weird shit in there. I mean, Xerxes is this portrayed as some like androgynous fucking gold speedo body jewelry wearing fucking effeminate god king. Obviously that's completely inaccurate. All right. And he's not like some giant wearing a golden speedo, just fucking like, oh the kind and generous god. Join me. Like I don't know where the fuck he got the idea to portray him like that from. And then of course the Persian army is and all a bunch of demons and ninjas. I mean, that looks fucking amazing on screen, and it did. But as far as historical accuracy, nah. All right. Again, you gotta turn the brain off. And this is, again, you're just watching a comic book action movie. I mean, honestly, they could have almost done this as a silent movie in some ways. Like, I'm not saying totally silent movie, but like all the dialogue is just King Leonidas yelling at people. He's like, that's Sparta. Like, we never surrender. Like, I think there's only a couple scenes in the movie where he talks like a normal person. And like one of them is when he's talking to his wife before he sets off the battle. And you just see him like standing on the balcony, butt fucking naked, just staring off in the fucking the distance. Like, I have to do this, honey. Like, what the like the shot was like that seems so fucking random, right? He's like, I have to do this. And he's talking to her like as in a normal tone.
Hmm.
And that's never seen like when all the Greek armies are kind of joining up. And of course he only has 300 troops with him, right? Because he's able to like some bylaws prevented him from like bringing the whole full might of the Spartan army with him. So he can only bring 300 troops. And then one of the generals or whatever he meets up with, he's like, "That's all you brought with you? It's 300?" And then he's asking all the other people of his army. He's like, "You, soldier, what is your profession?" And he's like, "I'm a potter." "You, what do you do?" "I'm a blacksmith." So on and so forth. And then he's like, "Spartans, what is your profession?" And they all like do the saber rattling, like, "Whoa." He's like, "I brought more soldiers than you did." Uh, Other than that, it's just him fucking yelling and screaming everywhere. Which there's some badass looking shots of him in action. Which Zach Miller is really good at adapting Frank Miller's work onto the big screen. Because
I mean, Zack
this is
Snyder.
what Zack Snyder's the
Yeah.
director.
Is it? Yeah, yeah, yeah. You said Zach Miller.
Oh, Zack Snyder. I'm sorry. Zack Snyder is very good at adapting Frank Miller's work to the big screen. Like some of the shots you see are like shot for shot, frame for frame, taken from the comic panels. So yeah, I give him credit there. And then for some reason Michael Fassbender is in this movie.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh
I
yes.
mean it's a star-studded cast, and the action is really done well, right? It's
mm,
all cool and stylistic. But if you want like a cohesive, I mean, the story itself is easy to follow. So if
mm.
you want something more intricate, something for you to really think about, this is not the movie to watch. If you just want to turn your brain off and watch a bunch of fucking ripped, fucking jacked up, fucking Spartan people beat the shit out of Middle Eastern immigrants, this is the movie for you.
Oh, Derek, I'm glad you mentioned Michael Fassbender because this movie, 300, had some interesting people that would go on to bigger roles in film and television after 300 got released. For example, Michael Fassbender, a couple of years later, would appear in um, Inglorious Bastards,
Hmm.
and that finally set off his career as an actor. He appeared in a movie a year after 300 called I think it was called Shame or Hunger or something. Basically, it's like there's one of these indie artistic movies that no one watches, but yet people claim it's one of the greatest movies ever made. Type nonsense. Well, actually, it was Hunger, and he actually lost a lot of the muscle mass he gained for 300 to portray a starving Irish resistant Irish IRA prisoner, but prisoner, and then you had Lena Headey, who plays the wife of King Leonidas, Queen
Hmm.
Gorgo. Gorgo, she will go on to a few years after this movie, go on to play Queen Cersei in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And that made her like one of the ultimate villains of all time. But here in this movie, she's just basically King Leonidas' puppet. Puppet. If I had to use words to describe her royal position in this movie, she's basically King Leonidas' fuck toy. Fuck toy. And then the narrator of this movie, Dilios, I forget the actor's name, but he is Faramir in Lord of the Rings. Basically the son of Denethor,
Yes. Yes.
and the least favorite son of said character. He's the brother of Boromir in Lord of the Rings, by the way. But anyway,
Well,
300, as you said basically followed the comic book quite closely in terms of shots.
hmm.
Like the panels for the comic book served as the storyboards for the movie, and many of the panels basically became shots in the movie. But 300 was actually a huge technical achievement in cinema because most of the movie you see was actually shot digitally. It was shot, I believe it was shot on a digital camera, and then most of the background and foreground is digital as well. Only certain props and certain building facades are real. Everything else you see is completely digitized, and that was done to make the movie resemble the color tone of the comic book as much as possible. Because if you notice, both the comic book and the movie both have a sepia tone to both of them, and that was done on purpose to replicate in the movie. But the movie was shot on believe a $75 million budget, which for an action film with the scope was actually quite low, and will go on to grow somewhere near $400 million, making a huge profit at the time for Warner Brothers, or whoever did own the actual movie at the time, and that put Zack Snyder on the map. His follow-up film would be another graphic novel called Watchmen, which if
Oh,
you
yes. Yes.
yes, if you watch his version of Watchmen, I tried reading the graphic novel, but there's just too much. There's just too much in the graphic novel to really put into the movie properly. But Zack Snyder did a fantastic job putting the Watchmen together for film, and you have a chance to watch the ultimate director's cut of the film. I highly recommend it because it's more or less faithful to the graphic novel. Give it take some scenes here and there, and also the climax of the film, in which in Watchmen, what's his name? What's the guy's name? Adrian Veidt. Um, he harnesses a giant squid in the comic books to frame Doctor Manhattan,
Mm.
but in the movie, he triggers an explosion with Doctor Manhattan's energy signature, and that forces Doctor Manhattan to leave Earth. But that's the only real major change from the graphic novel to the movie. But 300 is basically one of the closest adaptations from comic book to movie you will ever see, and it's really, and as you said, Derek, it's basically not a Dinky Man's movie because it's not aimed to be historically accurate, but it's being told as the movie's being told as a propaganda piece to motivate the Greek troops who are about to go into battle at the end of the movie. But if you have the chance to watch 300, go for it. And then you have the chance, watch the sequel 300 Rise of the Empire, which to me isn't as good as the first one, but it's still kind of interesting to see how to try to spin the narrative and Athens' favor compared to Sparta's favor in the sequel. But getting off topic here, Derek, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, so talking about Lena Headley again, she plays Leonidas' wife, or as you said, his friends of benefits. I mean, she was his wife. She was the queen.
Mhm.
And then yeah, she does play Cersei in Game of Thrones. And she was also Sarah Connor in the Terminator TV show, the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Oh, yeah,
Now with that
that's true.
said, now with that said, she actually sets off one of the most memeable scenes of the whole movie. It's near the beginning when the Persian army sends that messenger into Sparta, right? The "this is Sparta" scene, right? He kicks the fucker down the bottomless pit
Yeah.
because the messenger says something and she retorts. She's like, "Here in Sparta, the women give birth to real men." And he's like, "Why is this woman speaking out of turn?" And then Leonidas pulls out his fucking sword and he's like, "Here in Sparta, everyone is responsible for what they say." And then he fucking just kicks his ass down the well or the bottomless pit. And then he goes,
Yeah.
"Yes, yes, Sparta." So she sets off that whole chain of events.
Oh yeah,
But
she does. But I'll add a tidbit to that. In real life, Spartan women were allowed to speak amongst men, and she actually said that in real life. Like
yeah,
only Spartan women give birth to true men.
yeah, it's the Persian messenger that took offense to it, not obviously the Spartans. And of course, um, I mean, like I said, the movie, you gotta turn your brain off to watch this one. Now, another thing I'll point out before we wrap this up is the reliance on British and Scottish, Irish actors to play the Greek army, the Spartan army. This is a
Yeah.
trend or trope in Hollywood for some fucking reason. I know the other movie, I mean, every so often there's movies that portray like the Greek mythology. You had the Clash of the Titans remakes with Liam Neeson and Sam Worthington.
Mhm.
And then there was the Troy movie starring Brad Pitt, which he's American, but a good chunk of that supporting cast was Irish. You had Brian Cox, and then whoever the fucking dude was that played King, like the other King.
Mhm. He's Irish too.
Yeah, and then Orlando Bloom,
Mhm.
and then the other fucking dude that was with him. So there's a trend of that just continues well with the 300 adaptation, which again, this one's not trying to be remotely accurate, so whoopie do. But that's just a nitpick. But yeah, if you want to watch some well choreographed fight scenes, action scenes, and a very accurate comic book movie, watch the 300.
Right.
Watch Zack Snyder's 300. With that said, thank you for tuning in, and later.